In the glittering world of billion-dollar empires, Everett Sinclair had everything, except the one thing that truly mattered. For years he chased endless success, leaving his devoted wife Clara waiting. In the shadows of their empty mansion, her love slowly fading into silence. But one terrifying midnight, alone on a cold kitchen floor, a single night would shatter his world and force him to fight for the heart he almost lost forever. The kitchen was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock striking midnight. Everett Sinclair, billionaire CEO of Nexus Global, stood alone at the marble island, loosening his tie with one hand while scrolling through emails on his phone with the other. Another 14-hour day had bled into night. Dinner waited cold under a covered plate, Clara's note still beside it. "I'll be upstairs." He barely noticed the first twinge in his chest. He dismissed it as fatigue, the usual price of building an empire. Then came the second, sharper stab, like a vice tightening around his heart. The phone slipped from his fingers, clattering against the counter. Everett staggered back, clutching his left arm as fire shot through it. His breath shortened to desperate gasps. The room tilted. He dropped to one knee, then both, the cold hardwood pressing against his palms. Sweat beaded on his forehead. For the first time in years, fear, raw, uncontrollable fear, flooded every corner of his mind. This wasn't stress. This was something far worse. Flashes cut through the pain. Clara's smile on their wedding day, her hand in his during that weekend at the beach cabin, the way she used to wait up for him with warm coffee and open arms. All those nights he came home late, all those promises of next time, all those moments he chose work over her. Clara. The word escaped as a weak croak. He tried again, louder, voice cracking with panic. Clara. His vision blurred at the edges. He collapsed fully onto the floor, one hand still pressed to his chest, the other reaching toward the empty hallway. In that moment, the man who owned private jets, sprawling estates, and a company worth billions realized something terrifying. He might die tonight. Alone, with the love of his life asleep upstairs, unaware that the man who had ignored her for years was now desperately calling her name. The pain intensified, a crushing weight that stole every breath. Everett's cheek pressed against the cool floor as his body curled instinctively. His heart pounded erratically, each beat echoing in his ears like a warning he could no longer ignore. The grand kitchen, stainless steel appliances, gleaming under recessed lights, the faint scent of Clara's homemade lasagna now cold, suddenly felt vast and empty. In those agonizing seconds, time slowed. Regrets poured in unbidden, sharp and unrelenting. He saw Clara waiting alone at the restaurant on their 5th anniversary, her hopeful smile fading as hours passed. He remembered the weekend getaway she had planned, tickets booked, bags packed, only for him to cancel at the last minute for an urgent board call. He recalled countless nights when she fell asleep alone, reaching for a husband who wasn't there. More memories flooded, the warmth of her body against his in their early years, her soft laughter, filling quiet evenings, the gentle way she used to trace circles on his chest after they made love. All of it slipped away because he chose conference calls over conversations, stock prices over shared sunsets, ambition over affection. Tears stung his eyes as the truth hit harder than the pain in his chest. He had built a fortune, but he had starved their marriage. And now, on this cold floor, he might lose everything, including the chance to make it right. Imagine building a billion-dollar empire from nothing. Private jets at your command, your name on magazine covers, thousands of employees hanging on your every decision, only to realize, in one terrifying moment on a cold kitchen floor, that you've lost the one person who truly matters. That person who believed in you when you had nothing, who stood by you through every late night and risky bet, who loved you not for your wealth, but for the man you used to be. Have you ever been so focused on success, chasing the next deal, the next milestone, the next zero in your bank account, that you forgot to nurture the relationships right in front of you? Maybe it's a spouse who slowly stopped waiting up, a partner whose laughter grew quieter over the years, or someone who still sleeps in the same house, but feels miles away. That's the silent danger so many face: neglect in marriage. It doesn't announce itself with arguments or dramatic fights. It creeps in quietly: missed dinners, broken promises, affection replaced by exhaustion. One day you wake up and realize the person who once felt like home now feels like a stranger. But what if one single night, terrifying, painful, life-altering, forced a man, like Everett Sinclair, to finally see everything he had ignored for years? What if that night didn't end him, but saved him? Stay with me, because this true-to-life story is about to show how far love can be pushed, and how powerfully it can pull you back when you least expect it. Welcome to Lord of Hearts, where we explore tales that touch the soul and teach timeless truths. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. To all my returning friends, thank you for being part of this journey. If you believe love is worth more than any fortune, drop a heart in the comments below, like this video, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. Now, let's step back to where it all began, before the empire, before the neglect, before that night that changed everything. What sparked a love so strong it could survive years of silence? The answer might surprise you. The California sun poured through tall windows of the university library, turning dust motes into golden flecks that danced in the air. Everett Sinclair, 21, and already burning with restless energy, sat hunched over a stack of computer science textbooks and scribbled notes for his latest coding project. His dark hair fell across focused eyes. His fingers drummed impatiently on the table whenever a line of code refused to compile in his mind. Across the aisle, Clara Ellis searched the poetry section for an obscure collection of romantic verses she needed for her literature paper. Her soft brown curls were pulled into a loose knot, and she stood on tiptoe to reach a higher shelf. The book teetered just out of grasp. Without thinking, Everett rose, stretched across, and slid the volume free, handing it to her with a quiet, "Here you go." Their fingers brushed for the briefest second. Clara looked up, startled, then smiled, a warm, open smile that reached her green eyes and made the busy library feel suddenly still. "Thank you," she said softly. "I was about to cause a book avalanche." Everett, usually tongue-tied around anyone who wasn't discussing algorithms, found himself grinning back, happy to prevent disaster. "I'm Everett. Clara." She tucked the book under her arm. "Literature major. You?" "Computer science. Trying to build something that might change the world one day." He said it half-jokingly, but the fire in his voice was real. They ended up at the same table. What started as small talk about classes turned into an hour-long conversation, her passion for words that captured the heart, his excitement over lines of code that could connect people across distances. Before they knew it, the library announcement warned of closing time. Everett walked her to the exit, both reluctant to end the evening. As they stepped into the cool night air, Clara turned to him. "This was unexpected, but really nice." Everett nodded, heart racing faster than any program he'd ever written. "Same. Maybe we could continue the conversation over coffee tomorrow?" She smiled again. "I'd like that." Coffee the next day turned into daily rituals. Everett and Clara met between classes, at quiet campus cafes or on benches under sprawling oaks. She came from a small Midwest town where Sunday dinners lasted hours and everyone knew your name. He grew up in a cramped apartment with a single mom who worked double shifts, teaching him early that success meant never stopping. Yet the differences only drew them closer. Clara loved how Everett's eyes lit up when he explained a new app idea, how his hands moved as if sketching code in the air. Everett adored the way Clara read poetry aloud, her voice turning simple words into something that tightened his chest. She slowed him down. He pushed her to dream bigger. Evenings belonged to long walks along tree-lined paths as the sun dipped low. They held hands without thinking, fingers laced tightly. One night, under a sky scattered with stars, they stopped on a small bridge over the campus creek. Everett turned to her, voice low. You make everything feel possible. Not just the company I want to build, but a real life. Clara leaned into him, head against his shoulder. You make me feel brave, she whispered, like I could write something that matters. Conversations stretched late. They talked about fears, his of failing, hers of being ordinary. They shared childhood stories, favorite books, and secret hopes. Laughter came easily. Silence felt comfortable. Every glance lingered a little longer. Every brush of arms sent quiet sparks. Soon those walks ended with soft kisses under lamplight. Tentative at first, then deeper, full of promise. Clara's hands cupped his face. Everett pulled her close, breathing her in. The world narrowed to just the two of them. Opposites, yes, but perfectly matched, like puzzle pieces that had always been waiting to fit. Weeks turned into a whirlwind, and Everett surprised Clara with a weekend escape to a secluded cabin along the rugged coastline. They drove with windows down, wind tangling her hair, his hand on her knee as music played softly. The cabin was simple, wooden beams, a stone fireplace, waves crashing just beyond the deck. That first evening, they built a fire, flames crackling and casting warm glows across the room. Clara unpacked sandwiches. Everett opened a bottle of inexpensive wine. They sat cross-legged, on the rug, talking until the sky darkened. As conversation lulled, he reached for her, pulling her close. Their kisses grew urgent, hands exploring with newfound freedom. In the bedroom, lit only by flickering light from the hearth, they undressed slowly. Everett's fingers traced her shoulders, down her back, sending shivers through her. Clara pressed against him, her breath warm on his neck, bodies aligning in a natural rhythm. Gentle touches gave way to deeper connection. Whispers of I love you mingled with soft sighs. It was tender, emotional, a blending of hearts as much as forms. She felt safe in his arms. He discovered vulnerability in hers. The morning brought coffee on the deck, wrapped in blankets, as I watched the ocean. Clara rested her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. This feels like forever, she murmured. Everett kissed her forehead. It is. Winter arrived with crisp air and early sunsets, turning the campus into a wonderland of twinkling lights. Everett, who had never been big on holidays growing up, noticed how Clara's eyes sparkled whenever she talked about family traditions back home, stringing lights, baking cookies, gathering around a tree with hot cocoa. One Friday evening, while Clara was at a late seminar, Everett slipped into their small off-campus apartment with bags full of surprises. He wrestled a modest evergreen through the door, decorated it with colorful ornaments and strands of warm white lights. He draped garlands over the windows and set candles on every surface. By the time she returned, chilled from the walk, the place glowed like something out of a storybook. Clara stepped inside, mouth open in delight. Everett, you did all this? He pulled her into a hug, kissing her cold nose. Couldn't let my favorite person miss out on the magic. They spent the night baking, sugar cookies cut into stars and hearts, flour dusting their clothes as they laughed over misshapen dough. Clara smeared icing on his cheek. He retaliated by dotting her nose. Soon they were chasing each other around the tiny kitchen, breathless and giggling. When the cookies cooled, they curled up on the couch under a shared blanket, snow falling softly outside the window. Everett fed her a warm cookie, watching her eyes close in contentment. She nestled closer, body fitting perfectly against his. Their kisses tasted like vanilla and cinnamon, slow and sweet. Hands wandered gently, his sliding under her sweater to feel the warmth of her skin, hers threading through his hair. The night deepened into tender closeness, bodies moving together with familiar ease, every touch filled with affection and joy. As they lay tangled afterward, lights twinkling around them, Clara whispered, "This is my favorite holiday ever." Everett held her tighter, and it's only the beginning. Spring arrived with blooming cherry blossoms, and Everett knew he couldn't wait any longer. One golden evening, he led Clara back to the small bridge where they'd shared so many dreams. He carried a simple ring in his pocket, a single diamond set in white gold, chosen because it reminded him of starlight on water. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges, he stopped in the center of the bridge and took both her hands. His voice trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the weight of how much she meant to him. "Clara, you walked into my life in a library and turned every plan I had upside down, in the best way. You make me better. You make me whole. I don't want to build anything without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes instantly. She nodded before he even finished, pulling him into a fierce embrace. Yes. 1,000 times. Yes. The wedding was small and heartfelt, held in a quiet garden near campus. Clara wore a flowing white dress that caught the breeze. Everett couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him. Only close friends and family attended. No extravagance, just promises, spoken with trembling voices and sealed with a kiss that felt endless. That night, in a cozy inn nearby, they celebrated alone. Candles flickered around the room as they danced slowly to soft music, bodies pressed close. Laughter turned to whispers. Clothes slipped away, and they came together with the same tenderness and passion that had defined their love from the start, slow, deep, full of wonder at finally belonging to each other completely. In those early married months, their love reached its brightest peak. Mornings began tangled in sheets, sharing sleepy smiles and gentle caresses. Evenings ended with talks about the future, children one day, a home filled with books and laughter. Everett worked hard on his startup ideas, staying up late coding, but he always came home to her waiting arms. She supported every dream, believing in him fully, yet even then, a quiet hint of what was to come appeared. When investors showed interest, Everett's eyes would light up with fierce determination. This could be everything, he'd say, already planning the next step, the next sacrifice. Clara would smile and kiss him, proud and unafraid. Little did they know how far that ambition would one day pull him away. Fresh out of college, Everett poured every waking hour into Nexus, the social platform he believed would connect the world in ways no one had managed before. Their first home was a cramped one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. The living room doubled as his office, a second-hand desk piled with monitors, empty coffee mugs, and scribbled whiteboards covering every wall. Nights blurred into mornings. Everett coded until his eyes burned, fueled by ambition and cheap takeout. Investors weren't biting yet. Rejection emails stacked up. Money was tight. Ramen dinners became routine, and Clara picked up extra shifts tutoring literature students to keep the bills paid. Yet she never complained. When he came home exhausted at 3 a.m., shoulders slumped from another failed pitch, Clara was there, warm light on, blanket ready on the couch. She'd pull him into her arms without a word, letting him rest his head on her chest while she stroked his hair. "You're going to make it," she'd whisper. "I know you will." On the hardest days, she left little notes in his laptop bag, proud, "Of you today and always, or come home soon. I miss your smile." She attended every demo he gave, sitting in the back row with shining eyes, clapping loudest even when the room stayed silent. Her belief never wavered, not once. Everett would pull her close after those long days, kissing her slowly, gratefully. "How did I get so lucky?" He'd murmur against her lips. She'd smile and answer, "We got lucky together." In those lean years, their love felt unbreakable, forged in shared struggle, strengthened by every small victory and every quiet night they still managed to carve out for just the two of them. After 2 years of relentless effort, Nexus caught fire. A major investor saw Everett's demo at a tech conference and wrote a check that changed everything. 7 figures, enough to hire a small team and lease a real office. The platform's user base doubled, then tripled, as word spread about its seamless design. Tech blogs called Everett a rising star, and suddenly the world was watching. The first big win felt surreal. Everett burst into their tiny apartment, sweeping Clara off her feet in a spinning hug. "We did it," he shouted, both of them laughing through tears. That night, they celebrated with pizza and a cheap bottle of champagne, toasting, on their creaky balcony, to a future that finally felt within reach. With money flowing, they moved to a sleek two-bedroom condo in Silicon Valley. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of rolling hills, a kitchen Clara could actually cook in. She spent weekends decorating, hanging framed photos of their college days and filling shelves with her favorite poetry books. Everett surprised her with a new desk for her writing, carved with tiny stars along the edges. They threw a housewarming party, inviting the Nexus team and a few close friends. Clara mingled effortlessly, her warmth turning strangers into fast friends, while Everett beamed with pride at her side. As the night wound down, they stood together by the window, his arm around her waist, watching guests laugh below. "This is just the start," he whispered, kissing her temple. "We're going to build something unstoppable." Clara nodded, her heart full. "As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." Even as Nexus demanded more, their bond held firm in private moments that kept the flame alive. Mornings started with sunlight filtering through curtains, Clara brewing coffee in the kitchen while Everett wrapped his arms around her from behind, nuzzling her neck. "Good morning, beautiful," he'd murmur, turning her for a lingering kiss that tasted like fresh grounds and shared secrets. Those kisses often stretched longer, hands wandering lazily over familiar curves, pulling each other back to bed for stolen time before the day pulled him away. Passionate nights followed hectic days, Everett returning home to find Clara reading on the couch, setting her book aside to meet him halfway. They'd melt into each other, bodies aligning with ease, breaths sinking in a rhythm that spoke of deep trust and desire. Soft lighting from bedside lamps highlighted every touch, every whisper of appreciation. Clara cherished these connections, the way they reaffirmed their foundation amid growing chaos. Everett drew strength from them, her closeness a reminder of why he pushed so hard. In quiet afterglows, they'd lie entwined, talking about small things. Her latest poem draft, his latest feature idea, fingers tracing idle patterns on skin. For now, intimacy bridged any gaps, a constant anchor in the rising tide of success. Clara had dreams too, a novel simmering in her mind, poems waiting to be polished and shared. She'd always envisioned a quiet life teaching literature or running writing workshops, perhaps even publishing her work one day. But as Nexus grew, those aspirations took a back seat. She quit her tutoring jobs to manage their home full-time, handling bills, meals, and the endless details Everett overlooked in his focus. When he traveled for pitches, she stayed behind, packing his suitcase with care and sending encouraging texts. Her journal entries grew longer, capturing ideas for stories, but time to write slipped away amid supporting his vision. Everett noticed occasionally, pulling her close with a grateful kiss. "You're my rock," he'd say. Clara would smile, hiding the quiet ache. "Your success is our success," she'd reply, meaning it fully. She believed in him enough to set her goals aside, for now at least. In those sacrifices their love deepened, her quiet strength becoming the unseen force behind his rise. As Nexus scaled, the cracks began to show, subtle at first, like distant clouds on a clear horizon. Everett's phone buzzed constantly, pulling him into calls that couldn't wait. One evening, as they prepared for their first wedding anniversary dinner, his device lit up with an important investor update. He glanced at Clara, already dressed in her favorite blue gown, hair swept up elegantly. "It'll just be 5 minutes," he promised, stepping into the study. 5 turned to 30, then an hour. When he emerged, apologetic but energized from closing the deal, Clara had cleared the table. The candles had burned low, the meal sat untouched. She forced a smile. "Work comes first right now." "I get it." Everett hugged her, guilt flickering briefly. "You're amazing. Let's celebrate tomorrow." But tomorrow brought another crisis, a server outage that kept him at the office until dawn. Clara ate breakfast alone, staring at the empty chair across from her. Small anniversaries slipped by unnoticed. The day they met, their first kiss. Everett made it up with flowers or quick notes. "Sorry, love. Big things coming." But the pattern grew. Intimacy held on. But even that carried a hint of haste. Mornings shortened. Nights ended with him checking emails in bed. Clara felt the shift, a quiet distance creeping in, but she pushed it down. His dream was blooming after all. How could she complain? Yet, in quiet moments, Everett wondered if the empire he built was worth the small pieces of them it chipped away. Nexus Global didn't just grow, it erupted. Within 3 years, user numbers soared past hundreds of millions. Major partnerships rolled in, celebrities joined, brands advertised, governments even took notice. The valuations skyrocketed into the billions overnight after a massive public offering. Everett's face appeared on the covers of Fortune, Forbes, and Time, crowned as the visionary who redefined connection in the digital age. Private jets replaced commercial flights. A sprawling estate in the hills became their new home, acres of manicured grounds. Infinity pool overlooking the valley, staff to handle every detail. Gala invitations piled up, red carpets awaited. Everett shook hands with world leaders and fellow billionaires, his name whispered in awe. At first, Clara joined him at events, stunning in designer gowns, charming everyone with her quiet grace. Reporters called her the elegant force beside the tech titan. She smiled for cameras, proud of what they'd built together. But the pace became relentless. Board meetings in New York one day, Asia the next. Everett's calendar filled solid, every minute accounted for. He thrived on the adrenaline, the constant motion. "This is the level we dreamed about," he'd tell Clara during rare phone calls from 30,000 feet. "It's all falling into place." She'd listen, voice warm through the line. "I know. Just come home when you can." Yet home felt larger and quieter with each passing month, the echo of success ringing louder than their shared laughter ever had. The first real wound came on their 5th anniversary. Clara had reserved a table at the intimate Italian restaurant where Everett once proposed, white tablecloths, candlelight, the corner booth they loved. She spent the afternoon choosing a deep red dress that hugged her figure, curling her hair the way he used to run his fingers through. She arrived early, heart fluttering with rare excitement, ordering a glass of wine while she waited. Minutes turned to an hour. Texts went unanswered. Finally, one came through. Investor dinner ran long. Crisis with a new rollout. "I'm so sorry. Rain check?" Clara stared at the screen until it dimmed. Around her, couples laughed and toasted. She paid for her untouched wine, drove home in silence, and sat alone in the darkened dining room until the candles she'd lit burned out. Other plans crumbled the same way. Clara booked a long weekend in Napa, vineyards, hot air balloon ride at dawn, a cozy inn with a fireplace. Bags packed, she waited by the door. Everett rushed in at the last minute, tie loosened, face drawn. "Emergency board vote tomorrow." "I can't leave." She unpacked in silence while he took another call in the study. Birthdays became the hardest. On her 30th, Clara woke to an empty bed and a delivery of extravagant roses with a card signed by his assistant, no note in his handwriting. That evening, she cooked his favorite meal anyway. He arrived after midnight, kissed her forehead absently, and fell asleep within minutes. The next year, he forgot entirely, buried in a product launch until a reminder popped on his phone 2 days later. He made up for it with jewelry, but Clara wore the necklace only once. Each missed moment carved a little deeper, leaving quiet scars she hid behind understanding smiles. The emptiness settled in gradually, like dust accumulating on forgotten shelves. Clara filled her days with routine, morning runs through the estate grounds, afternoons lost in books from the local library. But the house, with its high ceilings and echoing halls, amplified the silence. Evenings stretched endlessly. She'd sit on the patio with a glass of tea, watching the sun set alone, wondering when Everett would call. She turned to her journal for solace, pages becoming her confidant. Late at night, under the soft glow of a desk lamp, she wrote, "Today marks another month without a real conversation. I miss the man who used to look at me like I was his whole world. Is this the price of his dreams?" Entries grew longer, raw with unspoken hurt, reflections on love's quiet erosion, questions about her own worth in a life overshadowed by boardrooms. To escape the isolation, Clara volunteered at the community library downtown. organizing story hours for children and leading book clubs for adults. The laughter of kids during read-alouds brought fleeting joy. Discussions with fellow readers reminded her of passions long set aside. "You have a gift for words," one volunteer told her after she shared a poem. Clara smiled faintly, but inside it stung. Her writing dreams had faded to hobby status. She also found refuge in a local community garden, tending plots of vibrant flowers and herbs. Dirt under her nails, sun on her face, it grounded her. There, she met kindred spirits, a retired teacher named Helen, who shared tales of enduring marriages, a young artist named Mia, who encouraged Clara to submit her poems to journals. "You deserve to bloom too," Mia said one afternoon as they planted seedlings. These friendships became lifelines, small bursts of connection in an otherwise solitary existence. Still, returning home to an empty mansion left her hollow. Clara clung to hope, but the loneliness gnawed deeper with each passing day. Everett felt the changes too, though he buried them deep beneath layers of justification. During endless red-eye flights, staring out at clouds below, he'd convince himself it was all temporary. "I'm doing this for us," he'd repeat like a mantra, picturing a future where Clara wanted for nothing. Exotic vacations, a foundation in her name for literary causes, security that lasted generations. The missed dinners, necessary sacrifices, the cancelled trips, stepping stones to bigger things. In boardrooms, surrounded by sharp-suited executives, he thrived on the power, the deals that shaped industries. Doubts crept in during quiet hotel rooms, flashes of Clara's disappointed eyes, but he pushed them away. She understands, he'd think, scrolling through photos of her on his phone before diving back into emails. Ambition had become his compass, guiding him further from home. He rationalized the distance as protection, sparing her the stress of his world, building a legacy she'd be proud of. Deep down, a voice whispered warnings, memories of his mentor's advice about balance, but Everett silenced it with another merger, another milestone. "Once we hit the next goal, things will slow down," he promised himself, knowing, even as he thought it, that the goals only grew larger. In this self-deception, he lost sight of the cost, convincing himself love could wait while empire building could not. What once burned bright between them cooled slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The passionate nights that used to pull Everett home no matter the hour became fewer. He'd arrive exhausted, kiss Clara on the cheek, and collapse into bed still half-dressed. She'd reach for him, but he'd murmur, "Tomorrow, love," already drifting off. When closeness did happen, it carried a different tone, quick, mechanical, lacking the slow exploration and whispered words that used to define them. Everett's mind often wandered to tomorrow's meetings, even as they lay together. Clara felt the distance in every hurried touch, every averted gaze afterward. She'd curl against him, hoping for the lingering caresses of old, but he'd turn to his phone, blue light casting shadows across his face. She stopped initiating after a while, the rejection too quiet but too painful. Nights passed with a chasm of sheets between them, both awake yet silent. Clara stared at the ceiling, remembering how his hands once mapped her body like sacred ground. Now those same hands typed emails under the covers. The emotional gap widened faster than the physical one. Conversations shrank to logistics, who would handle the dry cleaning when the chef needed menu approval. Everett barely noticed how Clara's laughter grew rare, how her eyes no longer sought his across rooms. He told himself the spark would return once the next big milestone passed. Clara carried the ache alone, wondering if the man who once couldn't keep his hands off her even remembered how. If this story is hitting home right now, if you're feeling that tug in your chest recognizing moments you've lived or feared, pause for a second. Smash that like button to let me know this message is reaching you. Drop the words "prioritize love" in the comments below. Let's remind each other, and everyone watching, what truly matters before it's too late. Your comment could be the nudge someone else needs today. The day had been brutal from the moment Everett's alarm cut through the dark at 5 a.m. Back-to-back meetings started with a tense video call to Tokyo, followed by a heated argument with the board over expansion costs. Lunch was a protein bar eaten standing up while reviewing quarterly projections. By afternoon, a major server glitch triggered crisis mode, engineers scrambling, public relations drafting statements, investors demanding updates. Everett barely sat down, pacing conference rooms, voice sharp on endless calls. His assistant pushed coffee into his hand every hour. His temples throbbed from caffeine and pressure. "We can't afford to lose momentum," he barked at one point, ignoring the concerned glances from his team. By 10 p.m. the fires were contained, but exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. He loosened his collar in the back of the chauffeured car, eyes burning as city lights blurred past. Another day won, another step toward global dominance. He texted Clara quickly, running late. "Don't wait up." No response came, but that wasn't unusual anymore. The estate gates opened silently. The drive curved through manicured lawns, the house glowing softly ahead. Everett stepped inside just past midnight, the grand foyer cool and hushed. No warm light from the kitchen, no soft music playing, only silence greeting him as it had for far too many nights. He hung his jacket, rolled his shoulders, and headed toward the kitchen. Already reaching for his phone to check final emails before bed, the kitchen felt cavernous under the soft under-cabinet lights. A single covered plate sat on the island beside a folded note in Clara's neat handwriting. "Dinner's in the fridge. I went to bed early. Love you." Everett's chest tightened for a moment. Not the pain yet, just the familiar pang of guilt he'd trained himself to ignore. He lifted the cover, lasagna, his favorite, now cold and congealed. He microwaved a portion anyway, the hum of the appliance the only sound in the house. Plate in one hand, phone in the other, he leaned against the counter and began scrolling. Urgent messages from the legal team about a regulatory filing, a chain of texts. From the CFO flagged high priority, a calendar invite for a 7 a.m. call with London. He forked bites mechanically, eyes glued to the screen, replying with quick thumbs. Another email popped up, an analyst report praising Nexus's latest numbers. A small rush of satisfaction cut through the fatigue. He forwarded it to the executive team with a brief "great work, everyone." He didn't hear the grandfather clock chime once, twice. Didn't notice how the house held its breath around him. Just one more email, he told himself. Just one more. Then, without warning, the first real jolt hit. It started as a dull ache in his chest, the kind he'd felt before after too much coffee and not enough sleep. Everett paused mid-bite, setting down his fork, and rubbed the spot absent-mindedly. Just indigestion, he thought, reaching for water. But then it sharpened. A piercing stab that radiated outward, down his left arm, up his neck. His fork clattered to the floor. Breath caught in his throat. He gripped the counter edge, knuckles white, as waves of agony crashed through him. Sweat broke out cold on his skin. The room spun slightly. This wasn't normal. This was wrong. Deeply, terrifyingly wrong. His heart raced erratically, pounding against ribs like it fought to escape. Fear gripped him fully now, primal and overwhelming. He slid down the cabinet, knees buckling, back against cool wood. Visions flooded unbidden, life flashing in fragmented bursts. Not boardrooms or billion-dollar deals, not headlines or handshakes. Clara, always Clara. Her face on their wedding day, radiant and trusting. The beach cabin, her body warm against his, laughter echoing with waves, holiday baking, flour on her cheeks, kisses tasting sweet. Then the regrets piled on, her alone at that anniversary table, eyes dimming with hurt. Cancelled trips, forgotten birthdays, nights she waited while he chased shadows of success. The journal she thought he didn't know about, pages wet with tears. How many times had he chosen a screen over her touch? How often had he promised soon without meaning it? "I can't. Not like this," he gasped, voice hoarse. Darkness crept at vision's edges. In that moment, terror sharpened to clarity. All the wealth in the world meant nothing if he lost her, if he died without telling her she was everything. Clara. The cry tore from him, weak but desperate, echoing through the empty house. Upstairs, Clara stirred from uneasy sleep, the faint cry piercing her dreams. Everett. She sat up, heart racing, straining to listen. Then it came again, weaker, desperate, her name. She bolted from bed, robe forgotten, feet flying down the stairs. The kitchen light spilled into the hall. There he was, slumped against the cabinets, face ashen, hand clutched to his chest, breaths ragged and shallow. Everett! She dropped to her knees beside him, cupping his face. His skin felt clammy, eyes wide with panic. What's wrong? Talk to me. Chest. Hurts. Can't breathe. He gasped. Terror flooded her, cold, sharp, stealing her own air. She grabbed her phone from the counter, fingers trembling as she dialed 911. My husband, he's having a heart attack. Please hurry. She rattled off the address, voice breaking. Setting the phone on speaker, she took his hand, squeezing tight. Help is coming. Hold on. Stay with me. His grip weakened, but he nodded faintly, eyes locked on hers, the first real connection in years. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, as Clara held him, whispering encouragements through her fear. Paramedics burst through the door minutes later, moving with practiced urgency. They lifted Everett onto the stretcher while Clara followed close, clutching her robe, face streaked with tears. The ride to the hospital blurred, sirens wailing, red lights flashing, across her worried features as she held his hand the entire way. In the ER, monitors beeped frantically, doctors and nurses swarmed, hooking him to 4S, running tests. Clara paced the hallway until a cardiologist finally emerged, expression serious but calm. Your husband experienced a severe stress-induced cardiac episode, he explained. Not a full heart attack, but a loud warning. Blood pressure through the roof, arteries showing early signs of strain. His lifestyle, constant high pressure, poor sleep, no real downtime, is taking a dangerous toll. If changes aren't made, the next one could be fatal. Clara nodded numbly, relief mixing with fresh fear. They moved Everett to a private room for observation. Machines hummed steadily now. The immediate crisis had passed. Clara stepped out briefly to call his assistant and cancel tomorrow's schedule. When she returned, she found him alone, staring at the ceiling, 4-line in his arm, hospital gown replacing his tailored suit. Before she could speak, the weight of the night crashed over him fully. No distractions, no phone, no empire to hide behind, just sterile walls and the echo of his own heartbeat on the monitor. Emptiness swallowed him whole. All the billions, the headlines, the power. None of it filled the void he'd created at home. He saw Clara's weary eyes from years of waiting, heard the silence of their bedroom, felt the cold space where warmth used to be. Tears rolled down his temples into the pillow. For the first time in years, Everett Sinclair, the untouchable billionaire, felt utterly broken. Terrified not of dying, but of losing the one person whose love he had taken for granted. Then the door opened softly, and Clara walked in. Clara stepped quietly into the dim hospital room, closing the door with a soft click. Monitors beeped steadily, moonlight filtered through half-closed blinds. Everett turned his head on the pillow, eyes red-rimmed, and the moment their gazes met, something shattered inside him. She crossed to the bedside chair and sat, reaching instinctively for his hand. He grasped it like a lifeline, fingers trembling. For a long minute, neither spoke. The silence carried years of unsaid words. Everett broke first, voice rough and low. I thought I was going to die down there on the floor, and all I could think about was you, how I've let you down, over and over. Clara's throat tightened. She squeezed his hand, staying quiet, giving him space. I've been blind, he continued, tears slipping free, chasing something that doesn't matter half as much as you do. I kept telling myself the long hours, the missed everything, it was all for us. But it wasn't. It was for me, for my ego, and I left you alone in that huge house night after night. His words hung heavy. Clara's own eyes filled, but she let him keep going. I saw it all flash by, every time I chose a meeting over you, every promise I broke. I'm so sorry, Clara. I'm so damn sorry. She brushed a tear from his cheek with her thumb. her touch gentle. "I know you are," she whispered. "I can see it." The dam inside him broke fully then. Sobs shook his shoulders. The proud billionaire reduced to raw vulnerability under fluorescent light. Clara leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, letting him cry without pulling away. Clara climbed carefully onto the narrow bed beside him, careful of the foreline, and let him rest his head against her shoulder. The tears slowed, but his breathing remained shaky. "I don't even know who I became," Everett said, voice muffled against her robe. "I told myself I was building a future for us, but I was tearing us apart. I see it now, clear as day. All those nights you waited, all the times I put the company first. I thought success would make you happy, but I never asked what you actually needed." Clara stayed quiet for a moment, stroking his hair. Then she spoke, soft but steady. "I was lonely for years, Everett. Not just alone, lonely. I'd sit in that huge house and wonder if you even remembered what I looked like without makeup or exhaustion in my eyes. I stopped writing because every time I tried, all I could put on the page was how much I missed my husband. I loved you enough to support every dream, but it hurt watching you drift further away." Her voice cracked on the last words. Everett lifted his head, eyes searching hers. "But I never stopped loving you," she continued, tears falling now. "Even on the worst nights, when you came home and went straight to your office, I still loved you. I kept hoping the man who danced with me in the living room with no music would come back, the one who looked at me like I was his whole world." Everett's face crumpled again. "I'm still here. I swear I am. I just buried him under all this noise. Tonight stripped it all away. I don't want the empire if it costs you." Clara cupped his cheek. "Then let's find him again. Together." As the hours ticked toward dawn, memories surfaced like long-forgotten treasures, pulling them both back through time. Everett started it, his voice steadying as he spoke. "Remember that beach cabin? Our first real getaway, the fire crackling, waves outside, and you in my arms like nothing else existed." Clara smiled faintly, nodding. "How could I forget? We stayed up all night talking then, closer than ever. Your hands on me, gentle and sure. I felt so loved. More came pouring out." Everett recalled their holiday surprise in the apartment, lights twinkling, cookies baking, flower fights turning to sweet kisses on the couch. "We ended up tangled there, snow falling outside, your body warm against mine. That was pure joy." Clara added her own, dancing in the living room on random evenings, no music needed. Just swaying together, her head on his chest, his arms secure around her waist. You'd spin me around, laugh, then pull me close. Those nights felt endless. They relived early married mornings, coffee steaming, lingering touches leading back to bed, bodies moving in perfect sync. Everett's eyes softened. "I'd trace your skin, whisper how much you meant. We had everything then." Clara's voice grew wistful. "Even during startup struggles, we'd find time. You'd come home late, but you'd hold me like I was your anchor." The recollections bridged years of distance, each one a reminder of the foundation they'd built. Laughter mixed with tears as they shared details. The way her laughter filled rooms, his protective hugs during storms. The flood washed away bitterness, leaving only the core of their connection exposed. With memories still lingering in the air, Everett shifted slightly on the bed, wincing at the tug of the fourth. Clara adjusted, her body fitting naturally against his side despite the narrow space and wires. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles softly, then interlacing their fingers with deliberate care. "I've missed this," he murmured, thumb stroking the back of her hand. "Just touching you, being here." Clara leaned in, her free hand resting on his chest over the hospital gown, feeling the steady thump of his heart beneath. "Me too," she whispered. He pulled her closer, arms wrapping around her as much as the setup allowed. She nestled into him, head tucked under his chin, their breaths sinking slowly. Foreheads touched next, a gentle press, eyes closing as warmth flowed between them. No words needed. The contact spoke volumes, mending invisible fractures. Everett's hand moved to her back, tracing light circles, the motion familiar and soothing. Clara responded by tilting her face up, their lips brushing in a tentative kiss, soft, unhurried, full of rediscovered tenderness. It deepened slightly, not with urgency, but with quiet affirmation, sealing promises yet unspoken. They stayed like that as the sky outside lightened, bodies close, hands exploring forgotten paths of comfort. The reconnection rebuilt trust in silent layers, a bridge across the years of absence. As the conversation deepened, lessons emerged naturally, woven into their words like threads strengthening a frayed bond. Everett spoke first, voice gaining strength. Love isn't something you win once and forget. It needs daily care, like a plant you water every morning. I let ours dry out, thinking it would survive on old roots. But without attention, even the strongest withers. Clara nodded, her hand still in his. And time, you can't buy it back. No matter how many deals I close or jets I own, those years I spent away from you are gone. I realize now how irreplaceable every day is. We get so caught up in tomorrow that we miss today. She added her own insight, eyes thoughtful. Success without love feels empty. You built this massive company, touched millions of lives, but at home, it left a hollow space. True fulfillment comes from the people we share it with, not the accolades we collect. Everett pulled her closer, absorbing her words. Vulnerability matters too. I hid behind work because it was easier than admitting I was scared, of failing, of not being enough. But opening up tonight, it's freeing. Silence builds walls, honesty tears them down. They talked of balance, how ambition can drive dreams but devour the dreamer if unchecked. Clara shared from her garden experiences. Everything grows best with harmony. Too much sun scorches, too much shade stunts. Relationships need the same. Effort from both sides, space to breathe, but always connection at the core. By dawn's first light, these truths settled between them, not as lectures, but as shared wisdom born from pain. Everett vowed to nurture their love daily, to value time above titles, to chase success that included her fully. Clara promised to voice her needs sooner, to rebuild together without resentment. If you're feeling emotional right now, if this tale of heartbreak turning to hope is stirring something inside, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Maybe a friend chasing dreams at the cost of home, or a loved one feeling distant. Drop your biggest takeaway so far in the comments. Let's build a community reminding each other that love deserves priority. 3 months after that terrifying night, Everett Sinclair did something the tech world never expected. He stepped back. He promoted his most trusted deputy to chief operating officer, delegated day-to-day decisions, and set strict boundaries. No emails after 6 p.m., no weekend calls unless the building was literally on fire. Board members grumbled at first, stock analysts whispered about reduced vision, but Everett stood firm. For the first time in 15 years, his calendar had white space. Real white space. The first evening he came home at 5 o'clock, Clara was in the garden pruning roses. She looked up, startled, pruning shears frozen mid-air. "You're early," she said, almost like a question. Everett smiled, a little shy, and held up a paper bag. "I stopped at that little Italian market downtown. Fresh pasta, tomatoes still warm from the sun, and that chocolate gelato you love." He paused. "I thought maybe we could cook together, like we used to." Clara's eyes softened. She set the shears down, wiped her hands on her jeans, and walked into his open arms. They stood there in the late afternoon light, holding each other as if relearning the shape of home. That night, they made dinner side by side, laughing when the sauce splattered, feeding each other bites straight. From the wooden spoon, slow dancing in the kitchen, to an old jazz playlist while the pasta boiled. When the meal was ready, they ate on the patio under string lights, knees touching, talking until the stars came out. No phones, no distractions, just them. A week later, Everett planned something bigger. He blindfolded Clara and drove her to the rugged coastline, where they'd spent that first magical weekend in the cabin years ago. He'd rented the exact same place. Wooden beams, stone fireplace, waves crashing beyond the deck. A table was set for two with candles and wildflowers. A single violinist played softly on the porch. When he removed the blindfold, Clara gasped, tears already gathering. "Everett, I want to start over," he said quietly. "Not erase the past, we'll always carry it, but choose every day from now on to love you the way you deserve." They ate lobster and drank wine, then walked a beach barefoot as the sun sank into the ocean. He stopped her beneath the same cliff where they'd once carved their initials into driftwood. From his pocket he pulled 2 simple gold bands, new rings to sit beside their original ones. "I asked a favor of the garden where we got married," he said. "They let me reserve it for tomorrow evening. Just us, a minister, and the people who've loved us longest. Will you renew your vows with me, Clara? Will you let me promise, truly promise, this time to put you first?" She kissed him before he finished, salt wind tangling her hair, tears mixing with laughter. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Again. The vow renewal was intimate and perfect. Only 20 guests under a canopy of blooming jasmine. Clara wore a simple ivory dress that caught the golden hour light. Everett couldn't take his eyes off her. They wrote their own vows this time, honest, raw, beautiful. Everett spoke first, voice thick with emotion. "Clara, I promise to choose you every single day, to come home to you, to listen to you, to see you. I promise to build a life where love is the priority, not the leftover. You are my home, my heart, my everything." Clara's words brought fresh tears to his eyes. "Everett, I promise to speak my heart sooner, to trust that we can grow together. I promise to keep choosing you, too, through every season. You are still the man I fell in love with in that library, and I can't wait to love you even more in the years ahead." They kissed as husband and wife all over again, while their small circle of loved ones cheered and cried. That night, back at the coastal cabin, romance returned like a tide long held back. Candles flickered around the room. They undressed each other slowly, reverently, hands trembling with wonder rather than haste. Every touch carried gratitude, every kiss a quiet apology and celebration. Bodies moved together with the deep familiarity of old love and the excitement of new beginnings. Gentle, then passionate, whispers of "I love you" filling the air like sacred music. Afterward, tangled in sheets with the sound of waves outside, they talked until dawn, hearts wide open. The months that followed were filled with deliberate joy. Everett surprised Clara with midnight picnics in their garden, slow dances in the living room to their old songs, handwritten love letters tucked into her books. They took trips purely for pleasure, Amalfi Coast sunsets, Parisian, cafes, quiet hikes in the redwoods, holding hands, stealing kisses, rediscovering the simple thrill of being together. And Clara began writing again. Really writing. Everett built her a sunlit studio overlooking the hills, stocked it with every pen and journal she could want, and guarded her creative hours fiercely. When she finished her first poetry collection, a tender, powerful exploration of love, loss, and second chances, he pulled every string to get it into the hands of the best publisher he knew. The book launched to quiet but glowing reviews, and Everett stood beside her at every reading, eyes shining with pride as strangers told her how deeply her words touched them. For the first time, their dreams weren't competing, they were intertwined. 10 years later, the Sinclair estate still overlooked the same rolling hills, but the atmosphere inside had changed completely. Laughter spilled from open windows, grandchildren's toys dotted the lawn. And on most evenings, you could find Everett and Clara on the wide front porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in fire and rose. Everett had long since transitioned to chairman of the board, spending far more time mentoring young founders than running daily operations. At conferences and university lectures, he no longer spoke only about scaling companies, he spoke about scaling lives. Build something great, he'd tell wide-eyed entrepreneurs, but never forget that the real metrics of success are measured at home. If you gain the whole world and lose the people you love, you've failed. Balance isn't a luxury. It's the foundation everything else stands on. Students and startup founders hung on his every word, often approaching him. Afterward, with quiet confessions, "I've been missing my kids' games," or "My wife says I'm never really present." Everett would listen, then share pieces of his own story. The cold kitchen floor, the night everything almost ended, More than one ambitious 20-something left those conversations with tears in their eyes and a new commitment to go home early that night. Clara's poetry career had blossomed beyond anything she once dreamed. 3 collections now sat on bookstore shelves, translated into 6 languages. Her words about enduring love, quiet resilience, and the beauty of second chances had comforted thousands. She led writing retreats in the countryside where women and men came to heal and rediscover their own voices. Letters poured in from readers who said her poems helped save their marriages or gave them courage to speak their truth. One autumn evening, as golden light slanted across the porch, Everett and Clara sat side by side in matching rocking chairs, hands intertwined as always. "Hard to believe it's been 10 years since that night," Everett said softly, squeezing her fingers. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "The night that saved us," he nodded. "I still thank God for that pain. It woke me up before it was too late." She smiled, eyes on the horizon, and it reminded me I was worth fighting for too. We both woke up. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip lower, painting the sky in colors that reminded them of their vow renewal evening. Everett lifted her hand and kissed it gently. "Best second chance I never deserved," he murmured. Clara turned to him, eyes shining. "We both deserved it. And we earned it. Every day since." The full journey of Everett and Clara Sinclair, a love that began with a simple brush of fingers in a library, nearly, crumbled under the weight of unchecked ambition, and was gloriously reborn the night a billionaire hit the cold kitchen floor and realized his true fortune had been waiting upstairs all along. This story carries timeless truths we all need to hear. Prioritize love and presence every single day. Small consistent acts, coming home on time, putting the phone down, really listening, build a marriage stronger than any fortune. Communicate openly before resentment has years to grow. Speak your needs. Hear your partner's heart. Silence is the slow killer of connection. True wealth isn't in bank accounts or private jets. It's in the relationships we nurture, the hands we hold, the hearts we keep close. Sometimes a crisis is the greatest gift life can give us, if we let it wake us up and change us for good. Everett almost lost everything in one terrifying moment. But because both he and Clara chose forgiveness, effort, and daily love, they gained more than they ever had before, a deeper, richer, unbreakable bond. So here's my question to you today. What will you do right now to show love to someone important in your life? Will you put the phone down tonight and really talk? Plan that date you've been postponing? Say the words you've been holding back? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. Tell me, what will you do today to show love to someone important? Your comment might inspire someone else watching to take that step too. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think twice about what really matters, do 3 quick things. Hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this message with more people who need it. Share this video with someone you love, maybe the person you need to call tonight. Subscribe to Lord of Hearts and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that could change a heart or save a love. Thank you for spending this time with me. You're the reason these stories exist. Until the next one, go love fiercely, live fully, and remember, no empire is worth more than the heart waiting for you at home. See you soon, family.